Yes. Hi. My name is Rigo Valdez. Again, I work for MLK Labor, and I work coordinating our local unions in a citywide organizing campaign of essential workers. And I am a member of the United Food and Commercial Workers Union. And actually, today, Nicole Grant, our executive secretary treasurer, will lead us off.
That's great. Nicole, over to you.
Thank you so much. Greetings, European siblings and friends. My name is Nicole Grant, and I am the first woman to lead our labor council of 100,000 workers in Seattle in our 130-year history. It's an honor to be able to talk to you about the seminal change for our labor movement, the $15 an hour minimum wage. And it brings extra excitement to hear how it's being considered for workers in your community and in your cities. For us in Seattle, it was utterly transformative because we won. We were able to lift the wage for workers dramatically, 30%. It happened first in SeaTac, a small suburb of Seattle, and then Seattle. It spread to Washington State, to other major cities and states like New York and California. And now, as you know, it's being considered by the Biden administration. It also touched off changes in corporate wage structures. So in particular, corporations that are based in Seattle, like Amazon and Costco, raised their minimum wage in time. It became a concept that they used in their businesses. It also changed the way that people talk about wages and the way they think about wages, because it was taboo in our culture for people to have frank, open conversations about money and about self-interest as working class people. And this was something that made it mainstream for everybody to talk about what they actually need for their families to do well, to survive. So I'm just going to tell a little story, a narrative about how it happened for us. Like I said, it started in SeaTac, and SeaTac is a city that is named after our airport, SeaTac International Airport. And as you can imagine, it is very working class because most of the people who live there are airport employees or other low-wage workers in retail and hotels. It is a young city. It's a city with a lot of immigrants from Africa, Asia, Latin America. And it's a city that had fantastic levels of unionism. So many of the people who lived in SeaTac were already union members or had spouses or partners who were union members that we knew this was the place to start, because this would be the place that we would win. We started in SeaTac with an initiative. It went to the ballot so that voters voted on it directly. And it passed by about 50 votes in a city of 30,000. So it was a real hand wringer. The theory was that if a family didn't have a yes sign in the front window of their house, that we could not consider them a yes vote and had to knock on their door and beg them to vote yes for this. And it worked by a thread, by a hair. Next, we brought the fight to the city of Seattle, where we pursued it in legislation. So it wasn't a direct, it was not the voters that determined it, but our elected leaders. And it was introduced during the most fervent citywide campaigns. And that's when the mayor of Seattle is elected every 4 years. So it was one of those years. And it was a time when the people that cared about this, the unions and the other members of our coalition of feminists and anti-racists and LGBTQ leaders, asked politicians that were seeking the mayor position if they would support it. And one by one, they made a public declaration that they would make this a priority once they were elected. It became a talking point in campaigns. That, of course, did not pass it. It was a lot of work to actually get it passed. We still had to win the public, and it required a very significant change in the way people thought about the minimum wage. There was a stereotype or a perception that people who made the minimum wage did not really need money, that they were 16 years old, that they lived with their parents, that they were saving up for something special. The reality is that at the time, a person earning the minimum wage was on average 36 years old, with children of their own, and more likely to be a woman. And while in Seattle, most of the people with wealth in our society and very high wages are white, most of the people who are working for minimum wages were people of color, were Black or immigrants, and also a lot of white working poor. But we did change that conversation, and we built a coalition around the mission to get wages better for everyone. It was the basic idea that if you get out of bed and go to a job and work in Seattle, it's typical to work between 40 and 50 hours a week, that you should be able to afford rent, food, electricity, and to be able to go to the movies. And that was something that people did not have. The coalition that fought for this vision was by and large labor unions. It was a very union-centric coalition. And I myself am a member of the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, a journeyman electrician. And to give some flavor for the spectrum of participants, construction workers like myself were serious proponents of the policy, as well as workers in hospitality and hotels, machinists that build Boeing aircraft, and educators, hospital workers. It was very popular among unions. And among our elected leaders, both politicians that identified as liberals in our Democratic Party, as in Seattle is by and large, it is very Democratic Party dominant. Nearly everybody in Seattle is a member of the Democratic Party. But we're also rare in the United States for having a formal left that actually has elected leadership called Socialist Alternative. And they were major supporters of the policy as well. However, even on our right, which is minuscule, there was also an awareness that something needed to change. There was an openness to this policy that was tepid, but ultimately part of its victory. And I don't want to pretend that everybody got along, because they did not. There was drama and conflict within the coalition and within the conversations about policy. People were fighting all the time during the campaign. And there was a group led by the socialists that had a campaign called 15 Now. And that meant what it sounds like. There was a coalition of Democrats that called the campaign 15 for Seattle, and they had a theory that it didn't have to be now, that it could be phased in over 3 years, that there could be carve outs that excluded certain workers as long as those carve outs expired and eventually everybody was brought into the policy. And despite this conflict or drama, it did not matter. This policy was unstoppable. And it changed the labor movement. It changed the American labor movement for a generation. It gave us confidence when we won that we could capture people's hearts and do something that is significant to regular people by the millions. It helped our labor movement redefine itself for the first time as a movement that included people of different generations, as a movement that truly included women, and as a movement that was multiracial, that was anti-racist. It also birthed other policies. It had been a very stagnant time in the labor movement. And with the birth of 15 also came paid parental leave, which I think I have envied many European societies, cities, and policies, because you've had paid family leave for pregnancies and children for so long. We never had it. And we got the best paid family leave policy in the country on the heels of the fight for 15. We got secure scheduling, a policy that allows people to control how long they work and when. It brought on the creation of a union for Uber drivers and Lyft drivers that was modern. We thought these workers were unorganizable, and they have now been organized. And just recently, we were able to get hazard pay for essential workers who are in the field during the COVID pandemic. So all that said, I just want to take this story as a recommendation to you, leaders. This is something you can have. It's something you can win. It can be transformative. And I hope that you have the same experience we did, because it was wholly worthy.
Nicole,
and that is it.
Thank you. What an inspirational story, that by fighting and winning the 15, we can win other things as well.